Ian Templeman et al.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he had a great study that he was assessing whether or not calorie restriction, which is just straight, I do 3 meals a day, we'll say, and I just reduce the amount of calories I take. So we'll say from 2,000 to 1,800. It was variable because he was controlling for what's your norm, what's your everything like that. I'm not putting everybody on 2,000. I'm putting everybody on a weight sustaining. So he took the number of people in his study, and he gave them 4 weeks ahead of time where they were actively measuring intake, they were actively measuring activity levels, and they were controlling for all of these things. And that's
perfect.
That's a very well done study.
Yeah, perfect.
So that's different than, like, you've got a lot of data, but the data didn't control for these things. So your data can't be a study, but it can be at least information to consider. So this study then, they were taking all that into account, and they were trying to decide, does calorie restriction, 3 meal a day calorie restriction, do better, worse, the same as alternate day fasting, which is 24 hours with no food, and then the next day you eat like normal.
But
Not like normal. You're making up for the calories you missed. So that was alternating day.
What a day that would be.
I know.
What a day.
4,000 calories that day. So yeah, so you've got that was your kind of control. This group of people, which they were all controlling for each other. Again, really well done study. That one was you've got your standing. I don't intend to lose any weight. I'm just trying to see if fasting actually makes me lose weight, even though the same calories are being taken in. And then the third group was alternate day with the calorie restriction. So it's the same calorie restriction as your calorie restriction group, being that they would be at 75% of their normal. This one would be 150% on their on day, 0% on their off day, which would even out to be about 75% of their normal. And his study was really well done, and it was really well executed. It was a bit short, only lasted about 4 weeks, but the data was so tight that you can draw some pretty good conclusions out of it.
For most people, though, too, you got to think, if you got to go longer than 4 weeks to actually truly see a difference in things, no one is going to do any of them.
Most people give up.
If you could structure
I
the
would
way
give
that,
up.
Yeah, if he structured the way that he structured this study and then the amount of time, it would be awesome to see what that data would be over 12 months. But to be quite frank, a 4-week window, that's about as realistic as it gets. You could probably convince anybody in the world to say, hey,
do it for a month.
Yeah, 1 month, what are we going to get? And I think it tells an awful lot. I don't know that it needed to be longer. It would have been amazing if it could have been longer.
Yeah, or if like a certain number of them decided to stay on, but that would change the randomization because these would be people motivated to continue to stay. Nevertheless, so the things they found that when you alternate on your fasting and you do not change your calories, so you're 100% of your calories, but you're doing 200, 0, 200, 0, no change. They didn't see a significant change in the person's overall weight, and so that kind of says just fasting doesn't matter. Like for those that are like fasting is it puts your body into a whole different system, and you burn your fat.
Now we're talking about in this format, we are referring to fat loss, not as much all the autophagy aspects and things where. You never really know. You can start getting into these really complicated things.
I'll touch on that for a second too, because this is a good study. So that part, fat loss wise, they didn't lose. So then the next two groups are both calorie restrictive. The calorie restrictive lost about the same amount of weight. So they lost the same amount of weight, but then they had actually measured for all of the fat loss versus non-fat loss, because we've got, lean body tissue as well, which accounts for like organs, water weight, connective tissues, all of the bones, all of the things that you have in your body that aren't fat. And they found that there was a reduction when you're doing fasting versus just calorie restriction. There was a higher reduction in those parts, and specifically in your like muscle tissue. So the people that did alternate day fasting with a restricted calorie had a significantly reduced muscle mass at the end of it versus the people that just did calorie restriction of the same amount.
Which is interesting because it may just be water.
It could
You know what I
be.
mean? It may,
I'd have to get really tight in there to see exactly what, because they did try and measure for many things.
right.
And I'd have to go back into the study and see exactly what things were missing. But it was notable that they said that the content of loss was notable between the two.
Right.
And that the calorie restriction, you were more likely to be able to maintain things like muscle mass, which I know that you went through a lot of stuff during your master's to determine why it is that we retain or lose muscle over time.
Sure.
So that, I mean, this study proves that, yeah, you need to continue to intake proteins to continue to maintain muscle and
kind of
build.
two different systems altogether, really.
Right.
But the reason why I suggested the water element is it's kind of an easy way out, right? You don't really know. It's the unexplainable. It's kind of the pieces that, that's what I find to be insane about any of these topics is anybody tells you that they know for sure anything, they're probably wrong.
I mean, unless they have sat there and they stuck you in a room where they put a mask over your face.
But to say, what I mean though is to say, like, I could give you precise advice and it will probably work.
Sure.
But if anyone is actually telling you exactly, specifically which system was which and what was what every single time in every single example, there's literally no way you can do it.
Right.
When I was going through tons and tons of education with all this stuff, I'll never forget trying to work through the Krebs cycle and all these things, learning. And then I'm talking to the teacher one day, and somehow it came up that this was a theory. And I was like so blown away. I thought I was learning facts.
I just spent the last year learning this is exactly how it works.
Yeah. It's almost like a probability of sureness is very high. But to think that you're not actually learning like a specific fact on it was always a crazy concept to me. But nonetheless, when you take my example of the 37-hour fast, it took me nearly 72 hours to plane my water levels back out. It took a while.
Oh, you mean afterwards?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It wasn't like, I ate some food, I'm back in the game right away. It took a little while for whatever it was. When you take all of your blood glucose and you start doing those and you empty out your liver, and I would imagine that if you go in a certain amount of time, that you're taking all your storage tanks of readily available glucose is all gone.
Yeah.
And in that, tons of water weight depletes.
Yeah.
And then when you cycle from day to day, I would just, that's my theory with that group is
it very well could be.
I would guarantee that their lean body mass had an awful lot to do with water just because the window was so tight on the altering that it just, you permanently almost lost that extra storage tanks of glycogen that might have been stuck into something, but who knows? But it was, that study is an awesome indication or a very well done, thought out grouping that gave results that seem to pretty much run in line with calorie counting does really matter. Energy consumption does really matter. There's no magic bullet, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, the magic bullet is that's true. And I think that's important. So it's really about you got two frameworks. You've got the biochemical framework, which is like calories in, calories out is absolutely, it works. It's real. Like we've thrown it through this very rigorous study and it came out true. So calorie counting actually matters. But then you've got the other side, which is more important really, which is the psychology of the person that you're trying to develop a diet for, even if that person is yourself. Because what can I stand? Can I stand to lose calories in breakfast and be able to retain them in the other parts of the day? Well, yeah. Well, then in that case, that's going to go really, really well for you. If you're a person that can't stand that and I need to do a restriction across the whole day, well, then that's going to be the thing that goes really well for you. It's really about how can I personally manage calorie restriction to get the desired effect.
Well, and sometimes too, when you think about it in terms of a diet plan, like an Atkins or something, that's an intricate format that explains to you the things that you can eat and you can eat in abundance of. When you put shackles on people, no one likes it. It's very tough mentally. And to be honest, if you've been a true calorie counter and you enter everything in, thanks a lot for listening to the show today. I'd really appreciate if you'd like the video, if you found value in it, and subscribe to the channel, clicking that notification bell so you also receive notifications for future videos that could help you out as well. If you have any questions about the content, leave a comment below and I'll be sure to interact with you as quickly as possible there. I've created a website called kbandstraining.com in 2010. We've been around for a long time with high quality resistance bands and durable equipment. I also have provided nearly 1,100 drills and videos for fitness training and athlete performance for youth athletes. So support my work. If you enjoy the content and you'd like me to continue doing what I'm doing, I would love the support. Thanks a lot for listening.